That's really nice of you to clap like that, and I've forgotten the story. So. We're supposed to tell a story now? Mine goes back to 1955. And it takes place in the motor pool in Fort Knox, Kentucky, the tank motor pool. I'd been drafted in the Army about a week before, and I and 3 or 4 people were under a tank, getting away from work and drinking a beer, when our platoon sergeant came by and saw us under there, and he said, "Hey, you guys, get out of there." Then he said, as we were standing in front of him, "Anybody got a driver's license?" I raised my hand. I thought he meant car. He meant tank. There'd been a school for tanks 3 or 4 days earlier, and I hadn't been a part of that, but that's what he thought it was. He said, "You're driving Baker 3 tomorrow for 3. Whoa, I haven't even been in a tank yet. I thought maybe I should tell him. And then I remembered my mother saying, "Always be prepared to seize life's moments." Was this a life moment? I wasn't sure. But it would have been a heck of a promotion, if I was a tank driver. Okay, skip to the next morning at 5 o'clock. I'm sitting in Baker 3 in the driver's seat. I got it started because a friend of mine who did take the course showed me how to do it. I had the radio stuff on. Move out, said the tank commander in my radio. We could only just speak by radio. So I pushed the stick. It was only a stick. There was no steering wheel. It was a stick. You push it forward, puts it in forward gear, left or right, back, and so forth. And 47 tons of steel began to move slowly forward. Move out, again from the tank commander. It was not too bad while we were in the motor pool. We were going slow, we stopped. When we got out of the motor pool, that's when trouble started. "Get going," said I was lagging behind. I was a little bit nervous, obviously. "Get going," said the tank commander. So I went and got up quite a bit, got to the point where I was a little scared, and then a little bit further to the point where I was absolutely terrified. I was overcorrecting. I'd go over to the left, and I'd move the thing back. Then I'd go over to the right, and move it back the other way. And I was swinging back and forth across the road at 45 miles an hour, 47 tons. The tank commander was shrieking at me by this time. "What's the matter with you? You're right, don't," all that kind of thing. There was a gas station up ahead, just barely missed the pumps. I was conscious of a crunch sound, which it turned out later to be the owner of the gas stations. It was his motorcycle. But by this time, the tank commander was shrieking. I couldn't even understand him. I knew I was probably one overcorrection away from going down the steep bank on my right into a riverbed. So I jammed on the brakes. And you'd think maybe the tank commander would have flown out. He told me later that what saved him was a 50 caliber machine gun. But everybody in the tank was hurt in some way, and then I got where I was going straight, slowly, and I kept telling myself, "Don't steer." And I got faster, and my foot was shivering on the accelerator so bad it was barely able to keep it on there, but I did it. So that's how I learned to drive a tank. I'm not quite done because I began to feel that my mother was right. It had been a special moment in life. I was a tank driver, and they never changed it. They never bothered looking up that I hadn't been to the tank school. I stayed a tank driver all the time we were in the States. When we got to Europe, I was promoted to a gunner, and then I became, a year later, a tank commander. Go figure. But you know, I still am reminded that probably the best way in some ways to steer is with your mind. Thank you. Thank you.